They've said the 21st century belongs to Asia. While Africa is certainly emerging, Asia offers a lot more readily available investment opportunities that are palatable to Western investors. And today I'm going to share with you 3 Asian markets that I'm bullish on right now. As always, none of this should be taken as investment advice, and I am not an investment advisor. I am an individual investor who has a portfolio that spans all around the world, including a substantial presence in Asia, not just in equities and other public markets, but also into real estate and other private investments. And so, if it's your first time here, I'm Andrew Henderson, founder of Nomad Capitalist. We're a boutique consulting firm that helps 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. Everything from lower taxes to better investment ideas that lead to things like second residence or second citizenship. You can learn all about it at nomadcapitalist.com. The main thing is about living freely in an unfree world and keeping more of your own money. You can also check out Nomad Capitalist Live. That's our annual event. It's open to absolutely everybody. And so what I'm going to set the stage for in the 3 Asian markets that I am bullish on is demographics. And so if you look at population growth in most European countries, a lot of them are at about 0.25% population growth, 0.2%, 0.3%. Some are negative, some are 0. And so that's pretty low. In the US, you're looking at about 0.4%. All these countries obviously are down over time, but Western countries have come down substantially. A rare outlier in Europe, for example, is Ireland, where they brought a lot of people in because people are going there to earn their very high wages, because tax incentives have brought lots of businesses there. So they're an outlier, and it shows that smaller countries that offer incentives create population growth and create opportunities for everybody. But by and large in the Western world, population growth is very low. The last time most Western European countries saw population growth at 1% was in the 1950s. Some of them not even that. And so when I'm looking for a place to invest that is outside of the conventional markets, is I'm looking at one of 2 things. I'm either looking at a large domestic economy, a place that has a lot of consumers, a lot of domestic demand, a lot of things happening within the country, or I'm looking at a place that's doing something very innovative to bring people in. So Ireland is some level of example of that, where great tax policy brought a lot of companies in Europe there, and now you have people moving from all over Europe to go there, including people who are leaving countries that have negative population growth, like Romania. Singapore is an example of that. Singapore has crazy population growth compared to like 0.4 and 1%. Their population growth numbers certainly spike up and down, but with immigration, because it is a tax-friendly place, because you can earn money there, because of all the opportunities in Singapore, they outpace their neighbor Malaysia, where birth rates are higher, but you don't have as much immigration. We've talked about countries before. What's the next Singapore? There's been some case for Georgia with its low tax policies. That's developing certainly more slowly. A country like Panama could certainly have this kind of potential. But where can you invest where you're going to have companies listing their stocks, for example? Where is there going to be kind of the economic hub for the region? It may not always be the biggest country, but I'm looking for one or the other. Okay, and so what I'm going to share with you is 2 domestic plays today, and then one place that's not going to be the next Singapore, but that is becoming a hub for investment in the region. And so the first place is India. So you've got a 1% population growth rate in India, basically taking over China for the world's largest population. Population growth in China is down. India is growing at 2.5 times the speed of the United States. And so India has been the best performer in my equities portfolio. It is now one of the best performers, and that is even in an unhedged equity fund. By the way, I'm not buying stuff like US ETFs. I'm buying stuff that is more local. You're not going to get nearly as much exposure in an ETF. And in my case, buying a US ETF would just be a stupid thing to do. But even in the unhedged portion of the equity fund, with the rupee being down to all-time lows against the US dollar, it is still outperforming a lot of stuff that I have somewhere else. So you have the world's largest population, you have better demographics, you have the 3rd largest PPP economy. The country gets a lot of bad press, and yet I think that you're going to see a lot of growth out of India. I think it's a very interesting economy to watch. What I like about it is, you have a country that serves, through services, for example, a lot of Western companies. There is certainly some trend against offshoring, particularly to places like the Philippines and India, in companies in the Western world. but they are developing a lot of different sectors there. I think it'd be very interesting to watch. And the world's largest domestic economy at a record low currency conversion, some very attractive, PE ratios in the equity markets. I think it's a very interesting place to invest. Another place that's been in my portfolio that's done very well, fourth largest population in the world, is Indonesia. People don't even think about it. People don't even know Indonesia is the fourth largest country. Java, the island of Java, which you've heard about, bigger than Russia, bigger population than Russia. And so I look at this as a more organic market, again, better demographics. The currency has been certainly weak over the years. I mean, I've watched it go from 8,000 the dollar down to almost half that, 14,000 the dollar. So my investments in Indonesia are hedged. And so on that basis, it has done very, very well. And so I think that, large population, and again, a lot of people have not heard about. Proximity. I mean, look at what Singapore's done. Singapore's done a great job. They've also benefited from a great geographical location. And so you're seeing Indonesia starting to, make some steps in the right direction. They can't turn it a dime as Singapore does. But I think in terms of domestic market, I love living in Malaysia, but much smaller domestic economy in Malaysia, even though it's a much more developed country. Malaysian stocks have not done well in the last 5 years. And so I would live in Malaysia. I would invest in Indonesia. I see a lot more potential there. And again, if good PE ratios, I think you have some decent dividends. It's a more attractive dividend environment than something like the United States for me. And so two very large countries. India obviously gets some press, but it's bad press. Indonesia, I think, is largely ignored. The third country that I'm very bullish on, I've been telling you about for years, is a place where people are coming in with their money. So China has come with a lot of money. You're seeing the ASEAN region in general, banks from within the region, companies are setting up their offices there, and that's Cambodia. So this is a very small country, but you see really high population growth, 1.4%. When I first went there, it was like 14 million. I mean, the population is growing very quickly. And so you basically, outside of what happened during COVID where everything shut down, you've had no recession since 1990. Why? Because you have a frontier market that basically has nowhere to go but up. And so you have a lot of lack of correlation with Western markets because things like not a lot of mortgages. The market just keeps on growing. I mean, there's just consumer growth from regional money coming in. And so as a result, you don't hear a lot about Cambodia because it is largely a China play. It's what they're talking about in Singapore, Malaysia, and companies are saying, hey, Vietnam is a little bit more restrictive. Myanmar's off the table now. There's some talk of Mongolia, which is not part of ASEAN, obviously, but which is the Southeast Asia bloc. Mongolia's kind of fizzled out. I mean, where are we going to go, right? Where's the next growth opportunity? And I think that for coming in and just totally creating the market, that is in Cambodia. So India, you have banks, you have all the infrastructure, there's always opportunities there. Indonesia, you have a lot of companies. Cambodia, you're starting with a blank slate largely. And so for me, I've been invested in real estate there, been very high yielding, very good at price appreciation, tax friendly, pretty flexible to market compared to, let's say, Vietnam, for example. And so I see substantial growth in Cambodia, one of the places where you can still buy property for under $1,000 a meter, although you generally need to have some kind of Cambodian corporation set up now, because just buying stuff off the shelf as a foreigner is going to be difficult. There is an opportunity to get citizenship, either through their very murky donation program, which is only worth it if you're going to buy a ton of property, or the new CM2H program, where you could get a residence permit and potentially work towards citizenship, and that would give you more opportunities to buy property. Prices there have gone crazy. I was in Sihanoukville on the coast almost 10 years ago now. You could buy apartments for nothing, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. You could stay in hotels for nothing. I mean, it was just really frontier. I remember walking out on this beach at night on this like weird, wooden planks that were barely put together. There was a guy who hung a single light bulb off the end of this little walkway out into the sea, serving cocktails for $1. You want a rum and coke for $1? No regulations, nothing. Now it's extremely developed. The Chinese want to make it the next Macau. Certainly there's some scams. I even saw the Taiwanese getting wrapped up in recently, where go to Cambodia, get some job that seems too good to be true. They take your passport and they screw you. It's not the Cambodians running this, by the way, but they've been very open for immigration. They've been very open for investment, and so in Southeast Asia, where investment isn't entirely open in all the countries, I think Cambodia will be very interesting because it's a very booming region. China is relying on this region. Singapore is obviously a wealth hub. What are the next places to invest? Malaysia, I think, if you want to get good deals on lifestyle real estate, but I'd much rather own real estate in Cambodia. One other place that I'm looking at as a wild card is the 8th largest population in the world, and that's Bangladesh. So a little bit further west in Asia. But I think, as a South Asia play, huge domestic economy, obviously has some challenges, but I'm seeing, I think some things moving in the right direction. And I've talked to folks who are investors in Asia, bankers and fund managers and what have you, and they say, we see some potential in Bangladesh. So that's kind of a wild card that I'm interested in. But for my portfolio, India and Indonesia have been well. Cambodia has a barely there equities markets. That's wide bid-ask spreads and not a lot of companies. But from the real estate side has been very successful. Indonesia and India from the equity side has been successful. You can go and buy REITs in India and get substantially higher yields than you might get in other parts of Asia. And so with these currencies being at lows, Indonesia seems like it's kind of a perpetual low. But India, I think, some definite opportunities. And so particularly if you can hedge against the currency risk, those are three markets that I'm very interested in. Cambodia, essentially on the US dollar with its riel, which trades in a very narrow band against the dollar. So those are my 3 or 4 markets that I am bullish on in Asia. Leave a comment below. I want to know which one you'd like to hear more about.